What's happening? What you do that for?
We thought you were our father.
Dwayne's too young to be your father.
Sure did. The Roger, a thin slice of meat and nothing else.
A 12-year-old girl in a coma for 3 weeks. A dancer who lost $1 million. A comedian who mailed a cassette tape and got roses back. A mother who lost her legs, her arm, her son. What really happened to the cast of What's Happening is heavier than anyone watching ever knew. Ernest Thomas as Big Brother. He was the bespectacled bookworm in the middle of every scheme, the aspiring writer with a notebook, a divorced mother, and 2 best friends who could talk him into anything.
That's my new cologne, Brave Bull.
Raj Thomas was supposed to be the smart one. The audience watched him fumble through credit card schemes and dating disasters for 3 seasons and decided he was the lovable straight man in over his head. But here is what almost nobody knew at the time. Ernest Lee Thomas, born March 26, 1949 in a poor neighborhood in Gary, Indiana, was nothing like Raj. He held a Bachelor of Science in Sociology and Psychology from Indiana State University.
Shut up before I beat you behind.
Now be quiet, Roger.
Yeah, be quiet, Roger.
Shut up before I beat your behind.
He had trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, class of 1974. By the time he walked onto the set of What's Happening, he had already played opposite Glenn Close in 2 Broadway revivals. The glasses Raj wore on screen had no prescription in them.
The Cosby Show, as a person, I did not like him. He was not friendly to me or to the Fred Berry.
Thomas didn't need glasses. The character did. He was also, briefly, almost something else entirely. During the first season of What's Happening, Thomas was one of the final 2 actors considered for the lead role of Kunta Kinte in the breakthrough miniseries Roots. The role went to LeVar Burton. Thomas would settle for the smaller part of Kailuba and watch from the sidelines as the most watched miniseries in television history aired without him in the lead. Thomas never married. He has spoken in interviews about a brief romance decades ago with a young classmate at the American Academy named Kim Cattrall, before either of them was famous. After the show ended, he disappeared from the screen for 6 years, then returned for What's Happening Now and later became Mr. Omar, the funeral director on Everybody Hates Chris, to a whole new generation of viewers who had no idea he was Raj. In 2026, Ernest Thomas is 77 years old, still working. The boy from Gary, Indiana, who put on glasses he didn't need, built a 50-year career out of being underestimated. Haywood Nelson as best friend. Hey, 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 3 syllables, a nod. A grin that turned a generation of teenage girls into fans of a show that was supposed to be about 3 boys. Dwayne Clemens Nelson was the quiet one, the soft voice sweetness in the middle of Raj's schemes and Rerun's chaos.
I'm Dwayne, stupid. Oh, Dwayne.
Haywood Nelson made shyness charismatic, and the country fell for him. But here is what almost nobody knew about him. Haywood Knowles Nelson Jr. was born on March 25, 1960 in New York City, which means he was 16 years old when he walked into the audition that changed his life. He had already been working since he was 6. The Levoris commercial, the Campbell's Soup commercial, the Hot Wheels commercial, 2 years on Broadway in the Herb Gardner play Thieves opposite Marlo Thomas. By the time What's Happening premiered,
Well, go anyway. All right. She's not out there.
Nelson had already had a longer career than most working adults. He was almost Michael Evans. The producers of Good Times originally hired Nelson for the role that eventually went to Ralph Carter. They rescinded the offer. 2 years later, the role of Dwayne, the role he was born for, landed in his lap instead. Off camera, Nelson was the rare child star who walked away clean. After What's Happening, he studied architectural design and electronics engineering. He worked as an assistant cameraman, a lighting technician, a digital media executive. He has been quietly raising 3 children with the same private, deliberate dignity he brought to Dwayne.
Would you like to hustle? I happen to be Betty's mother. Maybe you want a waltz?
His marriage to Diana Ramos lasted from 1987 to 1998. In April 2026, Haywood Nelson turned 66 years old, and his co-stars marked the day publicly. The first black teen heartthrob on American network television never built his life around the spotlight. He simply stepped behind it when the role was finished, and got on with the rest of being a man. Fred Berry as Dancer. Audiences saw a chubby kid in a red beret and red suspenders who fell over for a laugh.
Yeah, it looks like everyone's dancing.
Then now the time is right for me to make my move.
With who?
Cake.
They did not see a professional dancer. Long before What's Happening, Fred Allen Berry, born March 19, 1951 in St. Louis, Missouri, raised in inner-city housing projects, was a member of the Lockers, the Los Angeles dance troupe that helped invent locking and popping as American dance forms. He performed on the third episode of Saturday Night Live in 1975. He performed on Soul Train. The dance moves Rerun did on the show, the spinning, the dropping, the impossible lightness for a man his size, were Berry's real moves. The character was a slowed-down version of who he already was. But here is where the story stops being funny. By the time Berry was 29 years old, he was a millionaire and a man in trouble. In a 1996 People magazine interview, he admitted what the studio crew already knew. There were drug dealers inside the building. By the time What's Happening ended in 1979, Berry had spent more than $1 million on cocaine, marijuana, cars, homes, and an airplane he barely flew. He was diagnosed with diabetes. He attempted suicide 3 times. He was also the man who legally changed his middle name. Allen became Rerun. He understood, finally, that the role would never let him go, and decided to stop fighting it.
Mom, I'm home. Hey, don't bother, Raj. She's fixing our dinner.
Are you staying for dinner, Rerun?
Thanks for the invitation. I accept.
Mama throwing another crop of potatoes.
By 1986, he was sober. By the late 1980s, he was preaching at a Baptist church in Madison, Alabama. He lost more than 100 pounds. He spoke at schools. On October 21, 2003, a friend went to check on him at his Los Angeles home. Fred Berry had recently suffered a stroke. He was found dead at age 52. The dancer who could not stop spinning had finally stopped. The red beret and suspenders are at Forest Lawn now in the Hollywood Hills, where the joke and the man finally rest in the same place. Shirley Hemphill as waitress. In a drawer in a small apartment in Asheville, North Carolina in the early 1970s, there was a cassette tape. A black woman from a town nobody outside the Carolinas had heard of.
Here's something. Make $200 a week without leaving your house.
Hey, wait a second, Mrs. Thomas.
Working in a nylon factory, had recorded herself doing stand-up comedy alone in her room. She put the cassette in an envelope. She mailed it to the most famous black comedian in America, Flip Wilson, and waited. Flip Wilson sent her a dozen roses, a brand new cassette recorder, and an invitation to visit his set in Hollywood. That is how Shirley Ann Hemphill, born July 1, 1947, the daughter of Richard and Mozella Hemphill, an athletics scholarship physical education major from Morristown College, became a comedian. She quit the nylon factory. She moved to Los Angeles in 1973. She waited tables. She performed at the Comedy Store at night. By 1976, casting agent Joan Murray had spotted her. By the same year, she was Shirley Wilson, the deadpan waitress at Rob's Place.
You want me to get you a lift?
All right.
Good. There'll be a tow truck in front of your house in 7.
But here is what almost nobody knew. Norman Lear offered Shirley Hemphill her own spin-off after he saw her on Good Times. She turned it down. She wanted What's Happening instead. Years later, ABC gave her a sitcom anyway, One in a Million in 1980, but the show was canceled after 6 months. She went back to the comedy clubs. The young Rosie O'Donnell, just starting out, has said publicly that Shirley Hemphill was the first famous comedian she ever met, and that Hemphill personally got Rosie her first paying gig. Hemphill never married. She had no children. She kept her phone number unlisted because she was self-conscious about her health. On December 10, 1999, a gardener at her home in West Covina, California, looked through a bedroom window and saw her on the floor. She was 52 years old. The autopsy listed kidney failure. The girl from Asheville who mailed a cassette to a stranger lived alone, died alone, and made millions of strangers laugh in between. In 2019, an artist in Asheville painted a mural of her face on the side of a music venue. The town has not forgotten her, even if Hollywood largely did. Mabel King is Mother. For 3 years, audiences thought of her as one thing, Mama Thomas, the big, loud, hand-on-hip mother in the house dress, dispensing wisdom and threats in equal measure to two teenagers who never listened. Mabel King made "this is true" into a catchphrase. To most viewers, that was the whole woman. To anyone who had been in a Broadway theater the year before What's Happening premiered, Mabel King was something else entirely. In January 1975, she had originated the role of Eveline, the Wicked Witch of the West, in the original Broadway production of The Wiz. Her performance of Don't Nobody Bring Me No Bad News earned her a Drama Desk Award nomination. She was a serious stage actress with a voice that could fill a theater. 3 years later, in 1978, she would reprise that role on screen in Sidney Lumet's film adaptation, opposite Diana Ross and Michael Jackson. The same year, Steve Martin would cast her as his mother in The Jerk. She was born Donnie Mabel Elizabeth Washington on Christmas Day 1932 in Charleston, South Carolina, and raised in Harlem, where she sang gospel and nightclub jazz before she ever spoke a line on stage. But here is where the real story begins. Mabel King left What's Happening after 2 seasons. Producers wrote her out by sending Mama Thomas to Phoenix to care for a sick relative. The reason was a fight nobody at the network would admit publicly. King had asked the producers to give the Thomas family a present, working father, to stop showing yet another absent black dad on television. The producers refused. King walked. The years after were brutal. Diabetes took a toll in 1986. A stroke in 1990 left her paralyzed on her left side. Her left leg was amputated in 1991. Her right leg in 1994. Then an arm. Her only son Larry died in 1996. She lived nearly a decade at the motion picture and television Country House. Michael Jackson, who had played the Scarecrow opposite her in The Wiz, helped her check in. He attended her funeral. Mabel King died on November 9, 1999 at the Kaiser Foundation Hospital. She was 66. The mother who fought for a better black family on television lost everything except her dignity, and never once let it slip. Debbie Morgan as girlfriend. You have watched her for 50 years and you may not realize it. If you watched daytime soap operas in the 1980s, you knew her as Dr. Angie Hubbard on All My Children, half of the first black super couple in daytime television history opposite Darnell Williams. If you saw Eve's Bayou in 1997, you watched her play the clairvoyant Moselle in a performance the Independent Spirit Awards gave their Best Supporting Female prize. If you saw Coach Carter, Love and Basketball, or The Hurricane with Denzel Washington, she was there. In 1989, Debbie Morgan became the first African-American actress to win a Daytime Emmy for a drama series. Long before any of that, she was Diane Harris, Dwayne's girlfriend on What's Happening. Quiet, pretty, recurring, easy to overlook. But here's where it gets interesting. Deborah Morgan was born September 20th, 1956 in Dunn, North Carolina. Her father, a butcher named George Morgan Jr., was an alcoholic. He died of leukemia when she was 8. She was raised in the South Bronx by her mother, a teacher named Laura. She started acting in a high school production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, playing Puck, and worked her way through the Negro Ensemble Company in the New Federal Theater to a Broadway role in What the Wine Cellars Buy in 1974, at 17 years old. Off camera, Haywood Nelson, Dwayne himself, has said publicly that he and Debbie Morgan were dating during the show, and that he was too young and too immature to know what he was holding. They drifted. She married 3 times before finding the marriage that lasted, to Jeffrey Winston in June 2009. One of those earlier marriages, between 1989 and 1994, was to the Tony-nominated actor Charles S. Dutton. In 1979, 2 years after What's Happening, Morgan was cast in Roots, The Next Generations, as Alex Haley's great-aunt Elizabeth Harvey. She played the role from age 18 in 1882 to age 86 in 1950. A single woman aging across decades on screen in a project that became the most watched miniseries of its era. She was 22 years old. In 2026, Debbie Morgan is 69 years old. Still acting, still a force. The girl who played the quiet girlfriend on a Watts comedy turned out to be the most decorated dramatic actress the show ever produced, and one of the few actors anywhere whose career has crossed daytime soap, network drama, independent film, and Marvel television without ever losing a step. Earl Billings as owner. 100. That is the number of television shows Earl Billings has appeared in over the course of his career. Star Trek: The Next Generation, Hill Street Blues, Walker, Texas Ranger, ER, Without a Trace, How I Met Your Mother, True Blood, Cold Case, Parenthood, the recurring Aflac commercial, the man playing the exasperated human while a duck quacks at him. That was Earl Billings for more than a decade of national broadcast. Most viewers of What's Happening remember him as one thing only, Rob.
I get a feeling that you can be coaxed into coming back to work.
The owner of Rob's Place, the soda shop where the boys went to sit in a booth and not order much. But here is where the real story begins. Earl William Billings was born on July 4th, 1945 in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Cleveland, Ohio, the son of a single mother named Willie Mae Billings. He graduated from John Adams High School and went to work in a factory building motor frames. He learned acting at the Caramoo House, the historic black theater on Cleveland's East Side, under the legendary directors Reuben and Dorothy Silver, the same theater that trained Ruby Dee. Then What's Happening happened, and a soda shop owner became a 50-year career. He played the lead in the 2018 biographical drama Gosnell, a difficult, controversial film about a real-life criminal trial at the age of 73. He has appeared in Crimson Tide opposite Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, Con Air opposite Nicolas Cage, Antoine Fisher, American Splendor, Coach Carter, Thank You for Smoking, Fat Albert. He took a single recurring role on a 1976 sitcom and turned it into one of the most quietly prolific careers any character actor has ever had. In 1991, in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation called The Drumhead, he played Captain Griffith, a small role on a small ship in a far-off galaxy. Most viewers never connected the man on the bridge of the Enterprise to the man behind the counter at Rob's Place, but it was the same man. It always was. In 2026, Earl Billings is 80 years old, still acting, still working, still the man behind the counter the entire culture forgot to thank. Until now. Danielle Spencer as Little Sister. September 6, 1977, the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, California. A car carrying a 12-year-old girl and her stepfather is hit. The girl falls into a coma that will last 3 weeks. The stepfather, Tim Pelt, the man who taught her show business as a young child in New York, the man she called Daddy Tim, uses his body to shield hers in the impact. He dies of his injuries. She survives. That girl was Danielle Louise Spencer. She had been born June 24, 1965 in Trenton, New Jersey, raised in the Bronx, and at 11 years old had been cast as Dee Thomas, the deadpan, tattling, hand-on-hip little sister whose catchphrase, "Ooh, I'm gonna tell Mama," became one of the most quoted lines on American television. She did not remember the crash. She woke up in a hospital with broken bones in her arm, leg, and pelvis. She spent 6 months in physical therapy. She returned to the show, but here is where it gets interesting. After What's Happening was canceled in 1979, Danielle Spencer and her mother Cheryl moved to the Ivory Coast for the rest of her childhood. She came back to the United States, attended UC Davis, then UCLA, then Tuskegee University Veterinary School, where she earned a doctorate in veterinary medicine in 1993. She practiced as a veterinarian in Los Angeles for nearly 2 decades, then moved to Richmond, Virginia in 2014, where she did a regular pet care segment on the local CBS affiliate. The 1977 crash never let her go. In 2004, the spinal injuries from that car returned and left her partially paralyzed for 8 months. In 2014, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent a double mastectomy. In 2018, emergency surgery for a brain bleed. In 2014, the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture inducted her, the first child star ever permanently honored there. On August 11, 2025, Danielle Spencer died at Chippenham Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, of stomach cancer. She was 60 years old. Her mother and her brother, the jazz trumpeter Jeremy Pelt, were with her. Haywood Nelson, who had been her on-screen brother's best friend for half a century, called her our brilliant, loving, positive, pragmatic warrior. The little girl who said, "I'm gonna tell Mama," got plucked out of the Bronx, nearly killed at 12, and turned the rest of her life into a quiet promise to take care of every living thing she could reach. She kept the promise. So that is the What's Happening cast, then and now, and the What's Happening tragedies the soda shop never let you see. If you ever wondered what happened to Raj, Dwayne, Rerun, Shirley, Mama, Diane, Rob, and Dee, now you know. Where they are in 2026 is simple. Ernest Thomas at 77, Haywood Nelson at 66, Debbie Morgan at 69 and Earl Billings at 80 are still with us. Mabel King signed off in 1999, the same year Shirley Hemphill died alone in West Covina. Fred Berry followed in 2003, Danielle Spencer last August. Every single one of them deserved more than the show that made them famous ever gave them. And the audience that grew up at Rob's place, that ran home from school to find out what trouble Raj and Rerun and Dwayne were in this week, owes every single one of them at least the small kindness of remembering their real names.